Often, these difficult to explain phenomena happen because you are not a bunch of metrics from a lab test. You are not the sum of your lab tests. I am not saying it doesn't matter. I'm saying we're measuring it in an antiquated and useless way. One of the best things I ever learned about nutrition was because that is the key to cure and healing and long life. What everyone is always surprised to find is that here's lesson number 1.
On the Chris Senise Podcast, one of the things I strive for is to learn how to live our best lives, and I believe that to achieve this, many things need to work in tandem. The goal is for purpose to meet peak performance, and to do that, we must bridge the gaps between physical vitality, mental clarity, and strategic workplace tools that empower us to thrive. And sometimes that means challenging conventional wisdom. This week's guest does just that. He's a board-certified nutritionist, best-selling author, and former personal trainer known for challenging conventional wisdom around diet, cholesterol, and what it truly means to be healthy. With a no-nonsense, science-backed approach, he breaks down the misinformation that's held people back from achieving real wellness. Get ready for a conversation that cuts through the noise and empowers you to take control of your health from the inside out with none other than Dr. Jonny Bowden. Take a listen. Thanks for your interest in sticking around to watch or listen to my podcast, dedicated to providing tools and resources to help you claim and live your best life. If you're loving these conversations, make sure you hit that bell to subscribe or follow and never miss an episode of the Chris Senise Podcast. Don't forget to tap the like and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Let's grow this community of curious, driven minds together. Thank you, Dr. Jonny Bowden, for joining us on this episode of the Chris Senise Podcast. As I mentioned earlier, I have tons and tons of questions. The more I researched you, the more questions I had, and thought that there were a lot of topics that cross over, right? So I first found out about you looking into my own cholesterol, what I'm being told that I should be put on medication, and found out in our meet and greet that it's just not that simple. And then the more I dug, the more I was like, oh wow, this is even deeper. It's not just cholesterol, it's everything put together. So I'm gonna give you the floor with that, and just let's start with cholesterol, right? That's this LDL, HDL. Did I say that right? Mm-hmm. It's not an all-in-one. There are so many other factors that play into high cholesterol. Tell me about that.
Well, where do we even begin?
I know.
So, cholesterol is a substance. It's made in the body. Mm-hmm. It is absolutely vital. I don't know if you're not old enough to remember those old TV commercials where they would show the scrambled eggs and they said, "This is your brain on drugs."
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
If you were to take all of the cholesterol out of your body, those scrambled eggs would be what your brain would look like. You would basically die without cholesterol. So it is an absolutely necessary compound. It's called a sterol just because of its molecular structure. It doesn't matter. That's the classification it is. Waxy substance, 80% of it comes in the liver. So the first thing you want to know is, if you don't eat a drop of cholesterol, your body will make it. If you eat a lot of cholesterol, your body will make less. Your body wants you to have a certain amount of cholesterol. It's necessary for the brain. It's necessary for cell membranes. Has a lot of functions. It's a precursor to hormones. Whenever I tell men that it's a precursor to their sex hormones, they pay a lot of attention. So you don't want your cholesterol at zero. Right. You would die. You'd be dead. That said, one of the biggest misconceptions about cholesterol, well, I don't even know where to start. Let's start. Yeah, we'll start with this one. The first one is that total cholesterol, which is the number upon which most doctors write a prescription.
Right.
Mrs. Jones, your total cholesterol is 216. We got to put you on a statin. So, as William Goldman, the great writer, once said, tattoo this under your eyelids. Total cholesterol is meaningless. It has as much relevance to your risk for a heart attack as your hair color does. And that's not a quote from me. That's a quote from Dr. Peter Attia, one of America's top doctors and the author of the best book I've ever read on anti-aging called Outlive. And that's his quote. Total cholesterol has as much to do with your heart attack, with a heart attack risk, as your hair color, or your eye color, or the color, or the car that you drive. So we need to retire total cholesterol as an indicator of anything. Now, play devil's advocate. Many doctors don't just look at total, they look at LDL. And that is an improvement over looking at total. But it's way too simplistic. People have an idea that there is such a thing as good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. So let me explain to you once and for all in a way that you will all remember and understand why that's total and complete BS. Okay?
Okay.
I am a person, Jonny Bowden. I go to an airport, LAX. That's the airport that I live near. I get on a plane to go to Hawaii. Or I get on a plane to go in the complete opposite direction to Philadelphia to visit family. Am I the same passenger? The answer is yes. I didn't change identities. I didn't change genders, or I didn't grow taller or shorter or become.
Right.
I'm the same person traveling on two different planes. If you take cholesterol, good and bad, you put it under a microscope, there isn't a biochemist in the world who could tell you the difference, because it's the same thing. Just like I'm the same passenger. What's different is what kind of plane is it traveling on. So all modern work in medicine that's informed and that knows this stuff, what Peter Attia calls medicine 3.0, as opposed to medicine 1.0, where you go to doctor and Kaiser, you get a 6-minute appointment, they look and they go by the charts and, his total cholesterol is 216, we got to put him on a statin because that's best practices. That's not medicine 3.0. Medicine 3.0 is functional medicine. They spend a lot of time with every client that comes in. They do an evaluation, a fitness evaluation, a dietary evaluation. It's the whole person being treated. So that kind of medicine does not look at cholesterol, good and bad. They want to know about the plane. Because if you're trying to prevent a plane crash, what do you need to know? Do you need to know if Jonny Bowden's on the plane? Or do you need to know what the flight pattern is? What the predicted, if it's likely to crash, you need to know what air control. You need to know the big picture of the vehicles, not the passengers. Cholesterol is the passenger. The lipoprotein, that's the last L in HDL and LDL. High density lipoprotein, low density lipoprotein. There's also IDL, intermediate density lipoprotein. The last word is always lipoprotein because that is the container. That is the car. Cholesterol is the passenger. The lipoprotein is the boat. The cholesterol is the cargo. So what we really should be looking at, and what most medicine 3.0, what all people who practice medicine 3.0, enlightened medicine, I would say, that isn't run by the insurance companies and run by the medical system and completely owned and paid for by Big Pharma, but people who practice truly holistic medicine, the entire person in front of me, are looking at lipoproteins. How many lipoproteins are in circulation? What size are they? This is the data that doctors are looking at now when they're practicing the kind of medicine that I believe in. They're not looking simply at the cargo, because here's another way that everybody will remember it. If you're a traffic cop, and you're charged with, there's a busy intersection, you're charged with preventing accidents, because a lot of people have been killed on this accident, Van Owen and Victory. It's a lot of, so you come in, you're the new cop, you're the new guy in town, and you're charged with preventing. What's the first thing you want to know? How many passengers are in each car? No! How many cars are on the road?
Right.
How many cars are on the road? Because that's going to predict if you're a bouncer in a bar. Is there more likelihood that there'll be an accident if there's 10,000 people in the venue or 10? You want to know how many people are in the room. You want to know how many boats are in the water. You want to know how many cars are on the road. That's modern cholesterol testing. So when people say my cholesterol is high, I want to tear my hair out because number one, they're using antiquated measures like total or LDL. They're not measuring it correctly.
Right.
So what's high, they don't even know if it's the bad stuff or not. Let me give you an example of how the old-fashioned cholesterol test can completely disguise what's really going on.
Okay.
Me. So understand that what we're looking for here is how many lipoproteins are in the water. It's called the particle test. Particles are LDLs. So they're basically doing a test for the number of LDLs, the size of the LDLs, whether they're inflamed, whether they're looking really under the hood. They're not looking at some fairy tale 1963 medicine about good and bad. There's nothing in the body that's good and bad. There different things have different functions and different reasons, and to look at it like that is the equivalent of making a medical diagnosis based on short or tall. Now, short and tall are important to know. There are certain conditions that are much more associated with extremely tall people, and there are certain conditions that are much more associated with shorter people. That's an important thing to know. It is not the most important. It is certainly not the basis of a medical diagnosis. Yet that's what we're doing with cholesterol. So I had normal cholesterol.
Go back a second to something that you were talking about, that it's not the total cholesterol, and you mentioned pharma, because I remember when I was told, hey, you got to watch this, work out, eat better. I'm like, I kind of do those things already.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
And they were eager to get me on medication, just like a 0.5 or a 5 milligram. I don't remember what it was.
Right. And they can't even tell you what eat better means. They probably mean eat less saturated fat, which is another piece of bullshit advice. So can I say bullshit? I don't know what your audience is like, but
it seemed very scripted, honestly. It just seemed like
it is scripted.
Because I was told this for so many years. And then when I said, well, I just really don't like the side effects that come with this medication, even in the slightest dose that you want to give me. The response to that one day was, do you have any idea what a heart attack looks like? And I think you have a lot to say about cholesterol and whether or not it's really tied to heart disease.
Of course it's tied to, but not in the way we're measuring it.
Right.
Not with this cosmopolitan horoscope level of science. Where we're measuring something that is just, we're so far past good and bad.
Yeah.
That it's just like it should make every thinking person think, good and bad? That's good, like a good and bad arm, or a good. That's crazy.
That's where my questions come from. Like, what's good and bad?
So let me finish why the test is so bad.
Got it.
And how it can really prevent people from knowing what their risk really is or isn't.
Okay.
So what we want to know is how many LDLs are in we want that particle test.
Yeah.
And there are numbers for what, very low risk, under 1,000, moderate risk, 1,000 to 2,000, very high risk, over 2,000. Mm-hmm. So I have this perfect cholesterol by the old-fashioned measures of good and bad. Well, my doctors think it's great. I become a nutritionist. I learn this stuff, and I go, wait a minute, that test is bullshit.
Right.
And I go and I get the real test. And I'm in the red zone for particles. I've got 2,600. We want them to be under 1,000.
Okay.
Now, my LDL was just fine. It was just, the cardiologist thought this is all great. But when you looked under the hood, what kind of LDL is it? Is it the small, dense ones which really do damage in the artery wall, or is it the big, fluffy ones that don't really matter that much? Okay. Well, we now know that LDL comes in different sizes. We don't know that from the good and bad cholesterol one, but we sure do when we look under the hood. So I had too many particles, and they were the wrong kind. They were the small, dense. Let me explain small, dense, and big, fluffy. So basically, you got your LDLs come in two distinct shapes. There's variations, but for simplicity's sake, let's call them the small, dense ones and the big, fluffy ones. So imagine your artery wall is like a tennis net or chicken wire, something that's tightly woven. So you take your big, fat volleyball and you toss it at the net. What do you think happens? Absolutely nothing. Can't do any damage with a big volleyball thrown at a tennis net.
Oh, okay.
How about if you took a golf ball and you set it on fire and then you hurled it like a pitcher at the net? What do you think would happen? It'd probably burn a little hole in it. It'd probably do some damage. It would do something to the netting. Mm-hmm. Your LDL, the big fluffy LDLs, they're not good for you. They're also not bad for you. They don't do anything. They're a big friggin' volleyball. But the small, dense LDL particles are very atherogenic. They're the ones that actually get caught in the tennis net and start a problem, and then different microbes come in and surround that area because it's an injury, and then, cholesterol is one of those things, and then the LDL breaks and the cholesterol spills out, and everybody thinks it's cholesterol's fault, when really it was the damaged lipoprotein that was the problem. If it doesn't spill out, it's like those trucks that carry nitroglycerin, whatever, it's very protected, but if the truck crashes, and now you got the nitroglycerin on you got a big problem. Okay, so that's kind of the situation. So I had very high particles and very normal, good, old-fashioned cholesterol. I was one of those people who actually should have been treated for high cholesterol, but wasn't because we're using a cockamamie test from 1963. The other example of that is somebody has high LDL and they get treated with a statin. But when you do this test, you find out, wait a minute, the LDL, it's all those big fluffy ones. Yeah, they have a lot of them, but they're all fluffy and they don't do any damage. And, there's not that many of them. And so it can easily lead, using the old-fashioned test can easily lead to prescriptions that aren't needed. Mm-hmm. And it can also lead, in my case, for example, to a prescription that probably was justified, but nobody saw it. So it works both ways. It's not just that these tests conceal and everybody gets on statins. Some people who might have benefited from a statin are not getting them because they're using a cockamamie test. It's like, the cosmopolitan horoscope, basically. So that is the example I was using about you really, folks, if you're going to take, there's nothing, I'm not anti-medication, I'm not even anti-statins. I am anti-propaganda. Like Joe Rogan said about vaccines, he said, I'm not anti-vax, I've never been anti-vax, I'm anti-propaganda.
Right.
All right, and the idea that we should all be on statins and we should be on them based on the flimsiest of evidence.
Yeah.
And risk the side effects, which are numerous and considerable. Memory loss, libido loss, joint pain, a lot of stuff. And you and I would take a drug with a big, serious side effect profile if it was going to save our lives.
Right.
But if the benefit of it is very questionable, why take the risk of any side effects? Well, what I'm saying is, by all means, take that drug if it was recommended to you. Right. But make sure your doctor saw the real results, and he or she isn't giving that based on cockamamie numbers that don't mean anything. Yeah. Get them to order the right test. That brings us to why don't they? And the reason that they don't, by and large, is because it's not covered by insurance. And I used to blame this on the doctors. I'd say, have you not read a journal article in the last 20 years? How do you not know that this is the way you should be looking at blood lipids? Yeah. And when they started to explain to me what happens if they prescribe tests that are out of network, that aren't covered, they get a visit by the providers, and they go, Blue Shield will come to the office and say, Dr. Jones, we've noticed you've been, assigning a lot of tests that aren't covered. We'd like to do a little bit of a look at your records a little bit. If that doctor loses Blue Shield, they're out of business. Right. So the insurance companies control this, and who controls the insurance? It's all what we call the medical industry. Dwight Eisenhower warned in the 50s of the medical industrial of the military industrial complex. We have a medical industrial complex, and one corner of it is hospitals and hospitalists. That's why you pay $30 for a Band-Aid and $100 for an Advil, because they are absolute rip-off artists, and they're at different prices in different parts of the country, and you can't get an estimate for any of it because they won't give it to you.
Right.
So you got hospitals on one hand, you've got insurance companies on the other, you have academia, and there is quite a little revolving door of this stuff, and it is not set up for patient care. It is set up to make profits like any other corporation. They would love to make profits by helping you out, but helping you out, it's not the main purpose of it. Main purpose is profits, and if they have to choose between your health and not such a great health outcome, but profits, there's no contest. Nobody's sitting, wasting any time worrying about it.
Yeah.
There was in the Freedom of Information Act during the pandemic, we got to see lots of memos and emails. I read them with my own eyes. Nobody's going to tell me they're conspiracy theories because I read them. And one of them was a memo from the executives. It might have been the president, but it was a very high up at Pfizer.
Okay.
And it was a memo to everybody who was speaking to the press. And the memo said, we must remember that the purpose of every interview, the purpose of every press release, the purpose of every appearance on Good Morning America, anything that goes to the public has one purpose and one purpose only: to sell Pfizer products. And that's the truth. That's not new. That's only new to the people who didn't know it. I've been saying this for pretty close to 30 years.
Yeah.
Marcia Engel, who was the editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, one of the two most prestigious journals in America on medicine, wrote a book in 2006 called The Truth About Drug Companies, explaining how they work and exposing all of this. Almost 20 years ago, it's still going on. Everybody saw Dope Sick and heard about Purdue and Oxycontin and oxytocin and Oxycontin, and what they did and how they engineered that entire addiction.
Right. Right.
And everybody said, oh, they're so horrible. But what they didn't know is that every drug company does the same thing. They just got caught.
Well,
There's nothing different about what they were doing. They were pretty unethical and pretty horrendous, but not much more so than Merck and Pfizer and the other ones. Not much more.
I remember
That's standard operating procedure for the drug company.
Yeah, during COVID, and when you had the vaxxers, anti-vaxxers, I remember someone I know posting something on one of the social media platforms that said, I just trust what the doctors tell me. And if the doctors tell me that there's like a vaccine out there that's going to help me and it's going to protect me, I take it the same as I would an Advil that's going to take away my headache. I don't question it. I don't.
Look,
and I'm thinking,
I understand
everything.
the desire to feel that. I understand the attractiveness of that. We do not have time to research every position on everything. I don't know anything about investing. I have a guy that knows it, and I trust him.
Right.
I don't know anything about construction in my backyard, and I have a deck that's crumbling, and I've got a guy who comes in and he tells me what has to be done, and I trust it. We want that. And I remember, I know I'm going to get killed for this, and now hate me, but too bad. When Robert Kennedy was running for president, before he joined the Trump administration, he was interviewed by Barry Weiss, one of the great interviewers, Free Press. Used to be New York Times, used to be Wall Street Journal. She and her wife started the Free Press. It's a great resource. And they did an interview. And Barry Weiss said to Kennedy, Senator Kennedy, with all due respect, because he was saying, you got to do your own research. You got to do your own research. You can't just... And she said, Senator Kennedy, with all due respect, I have a young infant child who's about to go get the course of vaccines that have been advised. I run a business. I have a relationship. I'm very, very busy. And I dare say many women in the country are in the same boat. We don't have time to do our own research. If we can't trust the CDC or the FDA, we have to... And Kennedy said one of the most beautiful quotes I have ever heard in an interview, and he said, Barry, that's why I'm running for president. You should be able to trust the CDC, and you should be able to trust the authorities. And right now, you can't. And that's pretty much where I stand on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know wonderful doctors. I've worked with doctors my whole career. The number of doctors who know about nutrition and are able to answer those questions about nutrition and is, well, there are 800,000 doctors in America, something like 850. I go to the conferences for medical doctors that are focused on nutrition, like the American College, and you see the same 300 guys and women, the same 300 people. And that's 300 or 400 out of 800,000. So how many do you think really know about nutrition?
But it's interesting to me what people are interested in and what they're not. And so
they're interested in losing weight and having more energy.
Right.
Those are the two main concerns and 35 years of practice that I have seen time and time and time and time and time and time again. How do I lose weight? How do I have more energy?
Right. Well, how did we gain the weight?
Well,
how did we get sick? Right? I know you alluded to some of it before, but how did we
there
get
are
to this
so
point?
many hypotheses around this.
Yes, I know.
You know, it's such a great question, and yet the answer is so multi-determined. Freud used to say multi-determined. It's like not one thing. It's many things.
Yeah.
You could say, oh, it's a sedentary lifestyle. Oh, we're eating processed food. Oh, and I had a therapist once who said it could be all of those. You know, it was a very smart thing to say it could be this, could be that, it could be both.
Right.
So it is a confluence of different things. We spend, my wife and I, as much time as humanly possible and affordable in either Paris or St. Martin, both of which are French countries. We eat anything we want. We have never gained a pound on any of those trips.
Sure.
If you look in the streets of either St. Martin, where we go, which is a French-owned French country, or Paris, you just don't see a lot of obesity. And they got pastries there and breads that you can't believe, but they're not the same as here.
It's not.
And they don't eat it the same way. And so, you know, that's a Western society, industrialized and stuff like that, but it just isn't the same. So I don't think it's any one thing.
Sure.
I mean, again, they
agree
talk a
with that.
lot about the Mediterranean diet, but there's so many things in common with France and the Mediterranean. I mean, people sit in cafes. I don't know if you've ever been to Paris, but it takes a half hour to get the check. And the reason for that, it's not that they're slow, it's that the value is on sitting in the cafe and talking to other people, not being on your phone. Their whole society is organized on sitting in cafes talking to each other. And in the Mediterranean, the same thing. And the men sit there and they talk about their feelings and they have long lunches and they laugh and they take a nap. And, you know, it's not just what they eat. It's also the style of life and what goes into the food that they eat. You know, we eat food here that is a lot of the ingredients are banned in Europe.
Yes.
Like they won't even serve this crap to people. So, and I interviewed a very famous naturopath, one of the founders of naturopathic medicine in this country, Joseph Pizzorno, who started Bastyr University, which is the Harvard Medical School for naturopaths. And he had a very interesting theory. He drew a graph for me showing sugar consumption in America. And if you can see, it's sort of, you know, stayed here, it stayed here, it stayed here. Like that, you know. All of a sudden in 1980, we saw an explosion of these metabolic issues like diabetes and prediabetes and insulin resistance. All of this stuff started to just explode, obesity. So what happened in the 80s? So he looks and he goes, you know, it's so easy to blame all this on sugar. the sugar content of our diets wasn't that much more in the 80s than it was in the 70s or the 60s. What happened? And what he found was that around the mid-80s, the number of toxins in the air and in the environment reached a tipping point. It was extremely high. He said those toxins alone would probably not make people obese, and maybe the sugar alone didn't. But here's what happens when they intersect.
Okay.
Those toxins will ruin your insulin receptors. If you know anything about it, and I'll talk about it later if you want, that's the metabolic plague of the 21st century is insulin resistance, prediabetes. So you've got the toxins now damaging the receptors that should determine how much insulin you have. And insulin is what determines how much sugar is taken out of the bloodstream. And if it's not working properly, guess what happens? You get fat and diabetic. So according to Bisogno, we had a tipping point there in which two very different things intersected and made for. I can actually tell you one of my favorite studies that was ever done, and it has a very broad application for people to listen to. So I'm not sure what decade I should look it up, but it was maybe the 70s or 80s, could have even been the early 90s. There was a lot of environmental movements. And there was an area in Connecticut where these little gray tree frogs were dying at a very high rate.
Okay.
So the environmentalists all went in and they said, what's going on? We have to save the little gray tree frogs. And they see that the water, the body of water in which the tree frogs live, is fed from a stream by a factory that's putting out a toxin, a particular toxin. They go, they're killing our frogs. They're killing the environment. They're ruining the ecology. And they started protests, and they started to go after this company. And the company said, no. We have studies. It's not our thing that we're putting in the water that's killing them, because we've got all these studies, and they showed them. They took the environmentalists and they showed them tanks filled with the frogs, and they add the chemical. And yes, it kills a few frogs. It doesn't wipe out the population the way they were seeing.
Okay.
So you go, well, wait a minute. They don't look like they're faking these studies. How could this be? And some very brilliant investigator, who I quote whenever I tell the story, he looked at the difference between the frogs that lived in the tanks and the frogs that lived in the wild, where they were dying. Here's the difference. In the tanks, they were safe. No predators, no birds, nothing looking to kill them. In the water, their stress hormones, base level, were very, very, very high, because they're constantly being picked off by birds, larger animals, fish. I mean, they're constantly being killed, and they're constantly in a fight or flight mode. The stress didn't kill them by themselves. The chemical didn't kill them by themselves, but the combo did. So when you take a highly stressed organism that is depleted in its immunity, because stress does that, and then you give it this chemical, goodbye frog. So this is important to remember, because we're going back to the question of why are we so fat. Often these difficult to explain phenomena happen because of an interaction, not because of one. It's so easy to say, oh, it's sedentary diet. Oh, it's the process. Oh, it's this. But often it is a combination of the two. We saw this with COVID. People didn't learn the right lesson from it, but we saw it. We saw people, we don't even know the percentage, but a double-digit percentage of people who had COVID with zero symptoms. They did not even know they had it.
2 times. I didn't have any symptoms at all whatsoever.
Okay. So that was the common thing. Most people were not dying. They didn't even know they were sick.
Right.
Other people died. And then we started looking at the data and going, well, they had a lot of comorbidities, and they had a lot. So the point is that the same damn virus, if anyone who's ever worked in an office and something's going around, you go, oh yeah, Murray's out for 2 weeks with that virus, and Sandy's out for 1 day.
Right.
Why is that? It's the same virus. Our immune system is different,
Right.
like those frogs. Our immunity,
Right.
how good our immune system functions, our resistance, all of the things that impact that. So you can't just say it was the virus. It's the virus plus susceptibility and lack of resilience. I'm not just talking COVID now. I'm talking in general. Cold goes around. Some people are just really resilient. They laugh it off. Their immune system just goes, nothing. Other people are run down, stressed out, undersleeping, low levels of immune system function, and the slightest little thing. Look at a hurricane. You look at the coast of Florida. You see one house is standing after the hurricane, and the other one is in. Well, one had a better foundation. One had more resilience. It had better windows. It was built differently. So it's not just the hurricane.
Yeah.
The hurricane would knock over the bamboo house, but it didn't do anything to the concrete behemoth that was sitting there, and survived it quite well.
Thanks for your interest in sticking around to watch or listen to my podcast, dedicated to providing tools and resources to help you claim and live your best life. If you're loving these conversations, make sure you hit that bell to subscribe or follow and never miss an episode of the Chris Senise Podcast. Don't forget to tap the like and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Let's grow this community of curious, driven minds together. This goes back to, I feel like everything's connecting, because it goes back to even what you were saying about these blood tests that we're having, right? It's like nothing works. The information isolated doesn't really tell us anything, right? So it's putting everything together.
Pretty much like in life.
Yeah.
If you go on a dating site and you go, the guy or the girl or whatever it is, you're this tall and this color hair, and likes motorcycles or whatever it is, you got a bunch of digital data.
Right.
Does it in any way that predict how you are going to feel around that person? Or how you're going to connect with that person? Not really.
That's a good comparison. That's
not really.
Yeah. Does it really?
You got to see the whole person, dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got to see and it's the same thing here. You are not a bunch of metrics from a lab test.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you shouldn't take them seriously.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you shouldn't pay attention and try to move the numbers that are predictive of bad things happening. Absolutely. Right. If I didn't believe you could do that, I wouldn't have a career. For 30 years, I've been trying to do that with people. So I believe that. But I also believe you are not the sum of your lab tests. And people should stop thinking that they are. And we are, as many of us who are very concerned, and I see clients like that, they all come to me with cholesterol tests that they don't understand. They've heard so many things, the doctors don't explain it, so we do a lot of this kind of coaching. And I always try to explain to them about risk factors.
Okay.
And what everyone is always surprised to find is, I'll be happy to share this story with you because it makes people very happy. It should make you happy.
Good stuff.
So we think about all the things that are risk factors for dying or for heart disease or for all these other things. Mm-hmm. And, Peter Attia, to bring him up again, came up with a concept called the kick-ass 100-year-old. He said, what we really want to do is we want to be a kick-ass. That's the goal. We want to be a kick-ass. Mm-hmm. Now, what is a kick-ass 100-year-old? And he made a list. And the list was like, should be able to put a not very heavy, a 10-pound, 15-pound valise in the overhead compartment.
Okay.
Should be able to carry 2 10-pound weights 20 feet. Should be able to take groceries out of your car and carry them to the functional things, not running the marathon, just functional 100-year-olds, unassisted, kick-ass.
Right.
And he's a very obsessive guy, and he used to be a mathematician, so he came up with an entire protocol for what you would have to do every decade in order to get to be a kick-ass 100-year-old. You had to do this much balance, this much stability, this much weight training, this much cardio, this much, and just looking at every single aspect of life, because he'd figure you're going to lose this much muscle in your 50s, so we have to do this much training to compensate, and then you're going to be a kick-ass 100-year-old. Yeah, and so you got all these biohackers that are doing the ice plunge thing, and they're
Right.
doing ice baths because they help the adrenals and all this stuff.
Right.
So some researchers thought to themselves, this is a great concept, the kick-ass 100-year-old, but I'll bet you we could learn something if we could find some kick-ass 100-year-olds and ask them what they do. Let's reverse engineer this. Let's look at a community of 100-year-olds
Okay.
and see what lessons we can learn. So they went to one of the 5 blue zones, Sardinia, which, if you've ever seen White Lotus, the TV series, the last season was filmed in Sardinia, so you've seen what it looks like. It's just nothing but hills and mountains. It's gorgeous, and you can't basically walk out of your door to get a quart of milk without walking 10,000 steps. It's
Right.
just a walking place. Okay, and it's gorgeous and glorious and all of that. Sardinia has the largest population of 100-year-old men in the world. Just does. It's one of the 5 blue zones, and there are more 100-year-old men living and functioning there than anywhere else in the world. So they go to Sardinia, and they go, like, let's watch these folks. What do these guys do all day? What is the secret of living to 100, and they're happy, and they're doing stuff, and. So they said, we have 3 take-home lessons from observing the men of Sardinia. And it was said with tongue-in-cheek.
Right.
Like, yeah, but you can extrapolate from these lessons
Okay.
the larger lesson that could be applied if you didn't live in Sardinia. So lesson number 3, they went up in order,
Okay.
was live where there's lots of stairs. Kind of a joke, but basically what they're saying is, if you live where you have to walk 10,000 steps to get a quart of milk, that's gonna be a really good predictor of a long and healthy life.
Right.
So basically, you can't live in Sardinia. You go, I should walk everywhere. That's the lesson from that. Just always stay in motion as much as you can.
Right.
Okay. The second lesson. What do these guys do all day? Well, I'll tell you what they do. They're shepherds. So they go up in the mountains and imagine the hills of Sicily. I mean, we're talking paradise. We're talking nature's boundary, just looking around and just think about the information that your subconscious mind gets when you're out in nature.
Right.
About balance and harmony and permanence and eternity and flow and change. I mean, you're getting all this information. And what is that doing to your head? And who are they spending their time around? Sheep. The most docile, sweet animals in the world. So lesson number 2 was spend as much time as you can with sweet, docile animals. Translated, we have 2 divisions of our central nervous system, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Sympathetic is fight or flight. You're always in cortisol mode. You're running. You got deadlines. It's all that stuff.
Yeah.
And parasympathetic is rest and digest.
Right.
So parasympathetic mode is where everything good happens. That's where your detoxification in the cell happens. It's where you burn fat. It's where you create cellular energy. It all happens in parasympathetic mode. How do you get into parasympathetic mode? It's life extending. It's curative. How do you do it? Restorative yoga, spending time with sheep in the gorgeous hills. So these guys are constantly in their parasympathetic mode. That was lesson number 2. Spend as much time in parasympathetic mode as you can. That means rest and relax. That means meditation, deep breathing, walks in the woods, all the stuff that keeps you heart rate lower, alpha waves in the brain, all of that relaxation stuff, because that is the key to cure and healing and long life. So that was lesson number 2. Here's lesson number 1. And this is what a lot of my clients who come to me, I leave them with this at the end of the session because it makes them feel very good because they're already doing this. And they don't realize they're so worried about their LDL cholesterol that they forgot that they're doing the number 1 predictor of a long and healthy life. You know what it is? Make your family and friends your number 1 priority. Full stop, period. That's all she wrote. Make family and friends your number 1 priority. And by the way, that's not the only research that showed that. There's a study going on at Harvard called the Happiness Study. It started in 1936. It's in its fourth generation. They've been following people in their entire lifespan to see, who dies, who doesn't, who gets a heart attack, who doesn't, who's happy at the end of their lives in their 90s and who's not, and, all kinds of scales and forms that they fill out and that they monitor. And they look at their habits and they look at what they ate and they look at what they do and they look at all of this stuff and they see who's happy, who's not, what do the happy people do. Without fail, without exception, the number one predictor for long, healthy, and happy is community, relationship. So it's very important to remember that when to put the lab tests in perspective. They do matter, they are important, but this stuff matters even more. So don't neglect that while you're worried about fixing a lab.
It's how you live your life is critical. My grandmother passed away almost at 108. And my entire family fled communist Cuba in the early 60s. She was the one that stayed behind. No car, so she had to walk everywhere. When she worked, she had to walk everywhere, come back. The food was not tampered with, basically. So she was eating pure. She came to the States when she was 70. So imagine, already elderly, and she had all of these habits. And then I remember once when I was 13 years old, she came when I was 10. When I was 13 years old, spending the night at her house, in the morning, I'm hearing like this, and I'm like, what is she doing? I kid you not. She was probably 73, 74 years old, doing toe touches, stretching. Like, that woman was just that type of person. And she passed away right before her 108th birthday. And up until then, she'd been pretty lucid and pretty clear. And she was very intentional in the way that she lived her life. And not just that, but then when she was a little over 80, she was helping me raise my daughter. So that gave her this immense sense of purpose as well. And she stayed in shape just because the gift of being able to help raise my daughter was so great for her, because she didn't get that with me. She wasn't in the States yet. And there were a lot of lessons from her, because she really spent most of her old age, prescription free, not really needing anything. It was really when she was maybe 95, 100 that, I guess you're going to need a little push somewhere, but she's been an amazing,
That's pretty great.
lesson to everyone in the family with just,
I'll bet.
I mean, to get to that age and not need a little help in something is a pretty great story.
It's pretty great.
She was amazing.
Yeah.
She was amazing.
There are many, many studies that made us question the orthodoxy of good and bad. But listen, let me be very clear. Cholesterol matters.
Sure.
I mean, if you were putting a swimming pool in your house,
I love your metaphors.
I'm trying to come up with this. This is really on the top. I just came up with it. You get the contractors to come out.
Okay.
And they do some measurements of the depth of the soil or whatever it is that they measure.
Sure.
Let's just say measurements of the depth.
Okay.
And the depth is important.
Sure.
But let's say one of the people in the household happens to have some engineering background and knows something about how you measure depth. And he looks at the tools of the contractor and he says, dude, that isn't measuring the depth, because it doesn't account for the shift in the sand that we know is a factor now, and it doesn't account for the wind chill. Whatever it is, you're using this tool that you got at Home Depot 70 years ago. You need a better way to measure. And we're not saying the depth doesn't matter. We're saying you better get an accurate measurement of it.
Right.
That's what I'm saying about cholesterol. I am not saying it doesn't matter. I'm saying we're measuring it in an antiquated and useless way, and that we need to measure it using the modern tools of cholesterol measurement. And by the way, the tests I'm talking about is almost 20 years old. It didn't just come out yesterday. It's not some trendy, quacky thing. These tests have been around for 20 years. They're just not used because we have a $31 billion a year industry in giving statins out based on total cholesterol.
Yeah, someone would be at a loss for sure. We can also compensate our diet with things that maybe our bodies are producing that aren't excellent, but there's always natural supplements, correct? That we can just add to our diet. Like, so if your body's naturally producing something that's not great for you, I don't know, I'll leave that to you, you're the doctor, but you can always compensate if without necessarily having to go to medication, or before, let's just say before you need medication.
Listen, one of the best things I ever learned about nutrition was my first nutrition mentor in the late 90s, the
Sure.
great Robert Crayon, who taught a lot of the gurus that we know today. And he said that the two great problems with nutrition
Yes.
are thinking it does nothing and thinking it does everything. So nutrition can help a lot of things. Mm-hmm. It really, really can. It can't solve every problem, and it certainly doesn't solve zero problems. It's a very big, it's a tool in your toolkit that like no carpenter would go out without a screwdriver.
Right.
Right? It doesn't mean the hammer doesn't work. It doesn't mean the saw doesn't work, but if you don't have a screwdriver, what are you doing?
Right.
So nutrition and food is one of those tools. It's just an essential. I did a podcast last week, the Model Health Show, Sean Stevenson, which is one of the top wellness podcasts in America. And the episode actually was, when I last looked, was number 40 in the country for the most downloaded and listened to.
Awesome.
And we basically talked about the 4 pillars of longevity. And food and what you put in your body is one of them. It's not the only one.
Right.
A very important one. And to disregard it is foolish and crazy.
Right. So. Right. I mean, I can tell you in my own experience, times where I didn't feel well, maybe, definitely at a time that I did not realize the importance of what I was eating on literally everything. So it was a time where I was overweight. I wasn't feeling well. I was dealing with depression, and it just almost seemed like I had this list of symptoms of things, and I was like, until someone explained to me, study how to eat. And I was like, like, study how to eat? It amazes me, actually, how important that is, because the information that we need to do that literally needs to be dug up. And
I'm going to help you with that.
Once I made those changes, by the way, right, where I felt like, I don't have the energy to work out, or I don't even have the energy to go for a walk, food was the first thing. Suddenly the energy was there. I walked a block. I walked 2 blocks. I walked a mile. I walked 2 miles, and 30 pounds came off.
Good for you.
Good
for you.
But
yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and I don't know that a lot of people realize how small you can start. And it's just about informing yourself.
There's a TED lecture on this, and I really should have it at my disposal so I can give it out on podcasts. I don't know how you'd find it, but basically the TED lecture was about how when we take on a new project like exercise or diet or any of these things, we think we have to do this in order for it to matter. And her lecture was about everything counts. It was about how 2 minutes makes a huge difference. And here's why. I've known this since the 1990s, and I used to teach it to when you're exercising or when you're starting what you were trying to do with your walking, you're not just performing an activity to burn calories. You are training your brain.
Yeah.
And what you're training it to do is to win. So, for example, I had clients when I was a trainer at Equinox who were terrified of the gym. Terrified. It was in the 90s. It was New York City. These were very, very upscale meat market gyms. Everybody came in spandex, and you get these people who would come in, men and women, and they were out of shape, and they wanted to get in shape, but it was intimidating. It was scary as hell. It was like all these gorgeous people, Equinox in the middle of Manhattan. So she was very, very afraid of the gym. This is what we did. I'd go meet her at her house. She's a very big celebrity, so she got special training. I'd go meet her at her house, Central Park West, walk to the gym. And we walk in, and we walk out. That was our thing for the day. We walk in, take a look at the juice bar, nice here, right? Let's go home. Next day, we'd go in, go a little further, and actually stand around the treadmill and talk for a minute. And then we'd leave. Slowly, she's getting a little bit less frightened. It's called behavior therapy. It's called systematic desensitization. You get a little closer to the thing you're afraid of, a little bit closer each time the anxiety. Then I get her on the treadmill, and she walks for 2 minutes. Now, here's what's happening. Something you could say, well, she's not burning any calories. She's not doing anything. Oh, yes. Because your brain is coding every minute whether something is a win or a loss. Right. It's very digital. It's not analog. It's yes or no. So if you go into the gym with a goal to do a 3-hour workout and you do 2 hours, your brain gives you not a single gold star for that. It is a loss. You failed. You did not do what you said. But if you said you're going to walk for 2 minutes and you did, your brain says, bravo. You want to chalk up as many bravos as you can. Yeah. So when you do your walk 10 steps and then you do it you're chalking up bravos, and you're teaching your brain that what you, Chris, say, what you give your word to, is going to happen. And as Werner Erhard once said, if you keep saying it the way it is, your word becomes law in the universe.
Ooh. The mental diet. That's what you say to yourself is incredible.
I tell people to start when they're trying to build new habits. I give them a to-do list to do, and I tell them to front load that to-do list with things you cannot fail at. For example, I will drink a glass of water upon arising. Everyone can do that. I put the water on my nightstand. Yeah. Every morning I wake up, there it is, check it off the to-do list. Your brain just coded that as, hey, this guy's a winner. Said he was going to do that, he did that. You put down things on your list that are so easy, like I need to go to the dry cleaner. Okay, put that down. Oh, I did that. Great. And you are teaching yourself slowly but surely that if you say it, it happens. And that's big. That's a big deal.
That is a big deal, because it's important for us to feel accomplished. Because if you set out these, like, I live by I have 3 goals for myself in a day. 3 goals. 3. So anything on top of that is like, look at everything. If you keep it small.
Good system.
Yeah, and I believe in the power of 1%. Someone taught me that a while back, and I live by that. The power of 1% really gets you pretty far. Thanks for your interest in sticking around to watch or listen to my podcast, dedicated to providing tools and resources to help you claim and live your best life. If you're loving these conversations, make sure you hit that bell to subscribe or follow and never miss an episode of the Chris Senise Podcast. Don't forget to tap the like and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Let's grow this community of curious, driven minds together.